Thanks, Alex. Right, we have lots of tweets coming in. Can't read them all out. We have an interesting one from Michael O'Sullivan. Michael asked, how do we ensure recovery spreads through all regions and all economic sectors? In fact, we're going to be talking about that in a minute. Keep them coming in. Hashtag LP16 and hashtag StandUp16. Keep the conversation going. We have a brand new panel. The conversation is going to be about standing up for jobs. Welcome to Minister Jed Nash of Louth, Minister Sean Sherlock, Cork East, Eric Byrne, TD for Dublin South Central, Councillor Carrie Smith, candidate in Dún Laoghaire, Minister Anne Phelan, Carlo Kilkenny, Arthur Spring, TD for Kerry, Emmett Stagg, TD Kildare North, and Councillor Mark Wall, who is the candidate in Kildare South. Now, before they get to talk, I'm going to go over to Sarah Lawler, who has our first question for this session. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks. Lots of young people were forced to emigrate during the deep recession, but are now considering returning home. How can we keep creating the type of jobs that will ensure that they return and stay?
Thanks, Sarah. I guess 500,000 left since 2008, mostly outside of Dublin. We'd love to have them home, but as you say, how do we ensure that we have the jobs for them to come back to? I'm going to go to the man who's in charge of jobs. We'd love to have them back, certainly the brightest and the best before someone else scoops them up, but do we have a plan to get them back?
We absolutely do, Nora, we were founded in 1912 as the Party of Work, and the Labour Party makes absolutely no apologies for being obsessed with work. There's a dignity about work I think that the Labour Party uniquely understands. It's not just about getting your paycheck at the end of each week or the end of each month. It's about being respected in the workplace and being valued in the workplace and making your contribution to society. Yes, we've had far too many people who, for a variety of different circumstances, have had to leave this country to find work, particularly from 2008 to about 2011, 2012. But now, as Ciara said earlier on, people are coming back. Members of our own families who've had to leave this country, coming back to good, decent, sustainable jobs. We've got a stable economy now. We've got an action plan for jobs that's working. We've created 140,000 new jobs over the last 3 to 4 years because of that action plan for jobs. And when I went into the Department of Jobs, one of my key focuses was to make sure that we spread the economic recovery right across this country. It's our ambition that we reach full employment by 2018. That's a very, very strong Labour ambition.
What does that mean?
Absolutely achievable. It means that everybody who wants a job and everybody who needs a job has a job. And that's really important. It's about the dignity of work, providing people good, decent opportunities to work, and to make sure as well that they're well paid and well looked after when they're in the workplace.
And Jed, I just go to Sean actually. We were talking earlier on about foreign direct investment versus startups, the two twin engines that drive our economy. I guess it would be great if all our returners came back and said, I want to work in the areas where there are multinationals, but quite a lot of them, we should have Ireland income pregnancy sticks. So as soon as somebody has a child and they're away from home, they want to come back to where they grew up. They want to be close to their mother, their father, the school they went to. So startups are a very important part of that engine.
Indeed, and if I was talking to somebody in Brisbane or Berlin today, what I'd be saying to them is that, you know, if you're thinking about coming home, the jobs are not just in Dublin or in the larger urban conurbations. Increasingly, we're finding that we're winning jobs in foreign direct investment in towns like, for instance, in Fermoy, where recently biopharmaceutical company from Pennsylvania, ABEC, is creating 100 jobs, and they're looking for skilled labour. We're also seeing, for instance, in towns like Mitchelstown, big investments by Dairygold now. They're also looking for skilled labour. So what we've done is we've created targets through Enterprise Ireland, through the Action Plan for Jobs, to say that, and working with the local enterprise offices to say that we want to see more high potential startups. That is, the typical intergenerational family companies, we want to see them scaling up. Typically, they are engineering companies such as, for instance, EPS in Mallow.
And what might jeopardise that? Is it the lack of skilled labour?
I think we're working on getting the skills right, but if somebody is in Brisbane watching this, for instance, then, you know, the chances are that they have a skills pool that has been added to by virtue of their experience abroad. And we are proactively seeking to put people in touch with companies in Ireland because we want our people to come home. And what we're seeing is that, yes, in certain sectors there are skills. In the software engineering sector, for instance, there are certain skills shortages, to answer your question. But what we're seeing in other sectors like food and agribusiness, medical devices, through the research infrastructure, we put together a 300 million package, which sees industry working with academia, working with research partners now to create new thematic areas of research like food, and that will need skilled labour, and we have that skilled labour here in this country.
And on that point, Sean, actually, can I turn to you, Emma, because you're in Maynooth, and let's talk about skills, because it's all very well saying that there are highly skilled people there that we want to attract back to take on jobs in foreign direct investment companies. But there are also a lot of people who got left behind who have skills that are no longer useful. And look at all the people who've left Extravision. How do we bridge the gap between people who have skills that are no longer valuable to the economy and upskill them so that they can take part in this new growth we have?
Probably the biggest problem facing the government when they came to power was the high level of youth unemployment. That has been tackled now, and the numbers have dropped quite dramatically. But there's a whole pool of people still there, and there's upskilling needed. I'm not just talking about academic qualifications now. I'm talking about mechanics. I'm talking about plumbers. I'm talking about plasterers. I'm talking about electricians. And there is a scheme now in place, but it's not enough. And I'll argue that with the incoming government, that it's not enough. There's about 4,000 places have been created for apprentices of various sorts. We need to put in place a lot more than that to meet the gap that is there now in the building industry and all the other areas that the colleagues have talked about. To close that gap and ensure that people who are available for work are qualified for the work that's available. And that's the essential thing we're doing, are attempting to do, and quite a amount of it has been done, but there's a lot more to be done. And one of the things that's needed is actually put premises in place, or make premises available for the training of apprentices through Solus and
available locally.
Having them available locally. And as all politics are local, there's a very good proposal before the Department of Education at the moment for an excellent training area in conjunction with trade unions and the VEC and Intel in Maynooth, and it would be an excellent.
As you say, all politics are local.
it would be an excellent pilot scheme for the whole country, and I'd advocate it's going ahead immediately. But that's the type of thing we need.
I agree. Yeah.
Actually, space places training people. There's a number of people on phase 2 now, 500 I think at the moment on phase 2, and they need places now for the next phase.
And you have Intel out there as a big employer, but Carrie, you also have Microsoft. I mean, you're lucky you're in one of those areas that has already attracted a significant amount of multinationals. So I guess the question for you is, how do you hold on to them? And how do you grow? Because in your area, are you at the point of saturated employment? There are other areas of the country where people need jobs, but in your area there's a lot of employment.
Yeah, I suppose it's important that the foreign companies wishing to come to Ireland are supported by the IDA, because in 2014 the foreign companies employed 174,000 people, and it's not just the employment, it's also the economic impact. They paid $9.5 billion in payroll, they purchased $2.5 billion in Irish products, and they also spent $11 billion on Irish services. And they also, it's important that we attract these modern industries to Ireland, such as the pharma, the technological and the financial services,
and what's so in the future, where do you see all of that going in your own area? Would you see it being another Silicon Valley, attracting startups, or more multinationals?
Well, I think we need the multinationals, but we also need to ensure that the Irish small to medium-sized companies that provide, in sectors such as tourism and food are supported, are equally as important as the foreign companies as well. And just to touch on another point, to attract our younger people to come back to Ireland, we need to make sure there's an environment of good, secure jobs, plus affordable housing, safer communities, improved infrastructure, and schooling, and a competitive economy.
There's no point in bringing them home if that's
yes,
again
to attract them home
time.
and to keep them here as well. Because I've met a couple of people on the doors since I started canvassing at the end of July, and people that have actually come home in the last year, but they're kind of questioning, will they stay? So we need to ensure that they do stay and that more people come home.
And on that point, if you have any comments at home or you want to join the conversation, we're live on labour.ie across the world, and you're watching Labour Conversations in Mullingar as part of their annual conference. Keep your tweets coming in. On to our next question. It comes from Councillor Duncan Smith. You're very welcome, Duncan.
Thank you. During the economic boom, There were lots of jobs available right throughout the country, but unfortunately these jobs proved to be unsustainable in the long term. What can we do to ensure that younger people have good jobs, fair jobs, with good terms and conditions, that pay well and that are spread out throughout the country?
So in all pockets of the country. The big dilemma, I guess, in a fast-moving economy is to ensure that everybody's on board and everyone's on board in terms of their pockets. And can I turn to you in terms of rural development? We were talking earlier about the success of getting foreign direct investment in various pockets of the country, but nonetheless there are still huge swathes of the country that still need more investment.
Yes, there are huge swathes of the country that need much more development. The area in which I work is actually on a very local, on a very community based. We're delighted with the foreign direct investment if and when we can get it in. That's always the icing on the cake. But where I work, it's with villages and towns, very rural communities. We put all our eggs in one basket during the boom, where we looked to construction. Everything was concentrated on construction, and we neglected tourism, we neglected agri-food, we neglected artisan food production. And now, with my role in government, I'm looking at these areas now that are very, very local jobs. I'm talking about creating like 5 to 10 jobs in any rural area, which will have the impact of a foreign direct investment. I was in Banagher just the other day, and we were in a very rural community driven hub that employed 37 people in a very, very rural part of Ireland. If I was announcing a foreign direct investment of 37 people, I would be very happy. So I work...
Is it about startups then, about encouraging, because there's been thousands of new startups in the past year?
Yeah, and it certainly is looking at the startup, but it's also about encouraging people also to take the plunge that they become self-employed. It's about government supporting them. But one of the big issues across rural Ireland is broadband. I see broadband as being the great equaliser.
Alex has just gone.
The great equaliser. Alex has just gone, but I work very, very closely with Alex. There was a time when we had, it was a policy where we had a road of economic importance that got priority. I'm delighted to say that Labour in government has now made broadband that road of now economic importance, and I know that there are communities...
And when will we see that? I know that if I was speaking for everybody out there, it would be about broadband. When is that going to happen?
That is beginning in 2016 and is going to be rolled out to 2020. So it's watch this space. I know it's been very driven. I know the Minister and myself have made it a priority for us in government. So we are looking to broadband as being the great equaliser. Also, just to come back to the point about immigration and our young people emigrating, I, as a mammy of somebody who emigrated to Australia a number of years ago, I'm hoping to get her back. She's talking about coming back, but she tells me that when she went to Australia first, all of the parties she went to were people coming out. She's going to very few parties now because most of her friends and Irish people have actually come home, and they're all getting very good jobs, very good jobs.
And Anne, we'll come back to that in a second. I just want to, Eric, can I bring you in there? Because my father used to say, good, solid, dependable job. I started as a nurse. So, no, I was paid in job satisfaction for about 5 years. It wasn't good. When we say earn a living, which was his phrase, like what we really meant was we wanted people to earn a living. And then we started talking about the minimum wage, the minimum amount that you could earn.
Yes, I think it's the key issue, particularly in my constituency. As you know, the huge working class constituency spreads from Cherry Orchard down to Oliver Bond Flats. I think with Jed sitting in front of me, I think we ought to applaud Jed in creating this his low pay commission. The Labour Party are extremely proud that we have now given 2 increases to those on the basic minimum wage. But we're talking about creating 2 million jobs. We're on the verge of the first million. We're talking about 2 million by 2020. And what's of vital importance to the Labour Party is that these people who enter employment have a satisfactory job with decent wages and conditions. That's why the Labour Party are to the fore in creating this new policy of a living wage. And I think important to applaud those employers who have come on board the concept of the living wage,
Hear, hear.
like IKEA, like Lidl, and they should, I think, almost mimic the international movement called the fair trade movement, where you buy fair trade goods which are produced fairly and environmentally friendly, and a sense of responsibility. If you can target employers, more and more employers, and get them involved in this movement, and give them a logo, that people, when they see this is a fair trade, or this is a fair wage employer, that people will intend to engage more and more with them.
It's almost a recruitment vehicle.
And it's very productive. The workforce are very happy working in these environments. So look, we're going into the future. We can't leave anybody behind. We've always argued in the Labour Party of the value of work. If you are going to work, you should be remunerated to the extent that you can have a decent living standard. So look, we're all behind this movement, and I think it's important that the trade union movement engage with employers, engage with political parties, and move the standard of living up for the next tier of workers in a particular category.
And Arthur is sitting right next to him, and I have a phrase that I say to people in pockets of the country where there's no work: if you can't get a boss, be your own boss. Yeah. So you are a business owner yourself, and that's the reality for a lot of people. I mean, earlier Alex was talking about all these bright young things that the young scientists. I mean, these guys, they're going to go out and start their own businesses.
I have a phrase also, vote with your note. So take out your money and vote where you're going to actually use it, and do it locally. And to get back to what Eric was saying there as well, if you want to support good employers, do it by spending your money there. And there's also a phrase, we need to shop locally. I was at John B. Keane, who would have been a neighbour of my grandmother in Listowel. And his wife's funeral, Mary Keane, was recently. And one of the great accolades that she said was, if you don't shop locally, how do you expect to have a shop to shop locally in? So you got to support your own, and if you believe that people should be paid a fair wage, you go to a place that actually acknowledges that as well. Duncan asked a great question. There are two parts to it. You look at macroeconomics and it's boring, but at the same time, if you have an unsustainable model, Duncan, whereby credit leads to construction and it's over 25% of GDP, well, you're going nowhere. You're going to have a collapse, you're going to have boom and bust cycles. We don't want to go back there. You need to have a multiple-engined economy. You need to have tourism, you need to have food, you need to have retail, you need to have all the foreign direct investment that you can into it.
And actually, Arthur, we have a tweet in that you might answer for me. So from Ivana C. How do you ensure that jobs are green and sustainable? Just going on from what you've just said.
Straight out of I'll tell you, renewable energy is something that I'm very passionate about. I've studied it, I know a lot about it, and I think we have enormous capability. As a matter of fact, we have the most proficient area in the entirety of Europe at creating renewable energy, whether it's wind, wave, tidal, biomass. You put all that together, the opportunities are there for us as a country, not only for FDI, but also locally. And if you look at your core competencies in a particular area like Kerry, we don't have the infrastructure that Dublin has. There are particular businesses that Dublin does better than we do. But we've got great skills, and you look at those skills and you hone the employment to those areas. But you also say that this is for the purposes of having a good public sector, which we want to see in the country. The biggest employer in the country is public sector. In Kerry, for example, over 10,000 people are working in the public sector. The public sector this month is seeing a wage restoration, an increase in wages. Not only that, but they're also seeing the USC being reduced. So they're seeing a further increase in their net take-home pay.
And the impact in Kerry is bigger, obviously.
Pardon me?
The impact in Kerry would be much bigger because of that, you know, the wage increase and the reduction.
Absolutely.
In tax,
The shops are going to see it, the coffee shops, and it also gives a little bit of confidence into people that they can go in and refurb their houses, and they can employ tradespeople, as Emmett was alluding to earlier on, that the plasterer, the plumber, the painter, that they're all getting back to work, and that's what we're about. Jed rightly alluded to the fact we want people to get back to work. We want this country to be a fantastic place to live in, for people to work in, to look after children, to look after the old and the sick. Business is key to it. Public sector is key to it. We marry both of them together, and we're going to have a great country over the next 5 years, so that's where the Labour Party wants to be in government.
Thanks, Arthur. Mark. It's inevitable that in government you see things in 5-year terms, which is absolutely right. I have a child of 17, so you know when we talk about the future and what's going to happen, and he's sitting around saying, what am I going to be? What will I be when I grow up? What is the future? Like, because we've just seen a generation leave and go away, and we're now bringing them back and hoping nobody else steals them. But what is the future for the children who are going to graduate in the next year or two?
Well, I suppose from Kildare South, which is the area that I'm putting myself forward for in relation to Nora, we saw some great news recently in relation to Pfizer's and Procter & Gamble, who are creating those jobs that we need in Kildare South. And I suppose that's very important. And we also have the retail jobs that people have spoken about as well. And they're coming on board as well, I suppose. And we have seen those jobs coming in Tye Town. We're going to see them in Kildare Town. Kildare Village has expanded recently, creating those jobs that are needed, I suppose. And we have some as well, further jobs in SuperValue in Newbridge. And that's important. They're happening locally. But I'd just like to touch on Duncan's question in relation to the whole skills base. And again, I'm just probably going to clash a little bit with Emmett in relation to this. We'll both be wearing the white jersey tomorrow in Cusick Park against Westmeath. But I suppose today, just in relation to try and create and identifying those young people that don't have the skills and upskilling people. Look, I've been working closely with the ETB, and Emmett touched on that in relation to that, and we've identified South Kildare as a place that needs that training and upskilling, and we've created 2,800 places there for upskilling and training people, I suppose, Nora, and that's where we need to get to, and those are in what Arthur is mentioning in relation to upskilling and getting those people ready for the construction jobs and the retail jobs that are coming on board. And we're also using, I suppose, ex-public buildings in Crookstown, in Athy, where the training centres are being located, and that's what we want. We want those people from Ratangan right across Castledermot, Ballymore, Kilcullen, all those people to get upskilled and trained, because the jobs are coming, there's no doubt about that, and we want them ready for when those jobs come.
That's great, that fills in with what Emma said as well. Actually, Duncan, can I just go back to you on any comments that you have about the conversation so far?
No, I don't think we can underestimate what Labour's done in government. I mean, I met two of my cousins there on just after New Year, and they both were working in services industry. And when Labour came into government, they were earning $7.65 an hour. Now they're earning $9.15, and that makes a real difference. And that's just one leg of what Labour's implemented. And the Labour Parliamentary Party, and the last couple of years led by this man sitting to your left, have done so much, but the job's not over yet, and we need to continue it. And I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Thanks, Sean, can I just go back to you briefly, just on the issues around the new growth, the new areas for jobs and the skills gap, especially around the apprenticeship issues. There's a plan for that?
There is a plan on apprenticeships, but I think what we're seeing is that there was a certain loss of that skill set over the last number of years, because what we're finding now is that people are we'll say people who are building in the construction industry, in the plumbing and allied trades.
Well, they're off in Australia and Canada building their roads. And
but what I spoke to a civil engineer last week who told me that they can't get those vital skills now at the moment as the economy regenerates. So, as Emmett was saying earlier on, as we've been talking about, and Jan will be talking about this as well, is just you need to be able to ensure that you have the throughput of the traditional skills. But the ETBs, the Educational and Training Boards, the former VCs, are doing a lot of work in relation to that, as are the Institutes of Technology. And there has been a serious gap analysis done by the HEA in relation to that, the Higher Education Authority, and there's a lot of work ongoing in ensuring that we have the necessary skills base, but also that you ensure that there's proper accreditation for those skills when they are required. A bit like the German model, if you will, where, to be an apprenticeship or to come through an apprenticeship model, it is extremely strong.
And Sean, can I just challenge you just a little bit?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Why Labour then? Is any other government doing the same thing? Is it happening anyway? This, the jobs, full jobs by 2018. So tell me why Labour needs to get into government to do that.
I think what you need, jobs are not magicked out of the air. People have accused us, and they say it's external factors. The price of oil, low interest rates are now having a knock-on benefit effect for the economy. What we're saying is that the biggest funder of business, in terms of work through the local enterprise offices, through Enterprise Ireland, through IDEA Ireland, is the state. It is the taxpayer through their hard-earned tax euros. That money is utilised to attract foreign direct investment. I spoke about ABEC earlier on. You don't win an ABEC, a biopharmaceutical company coming in to service the pharmaceutical sector throughout Ireland in a town like Fermoy. You don't win that investment unless you have IDA people resourced in North America, in Asia, in Japan. That is the state, and that's led by, I've served in enterprise, Jed is serving in enterprise. It's good ministers who can see the value of that and who say, look, send our people out to the world, give them the resources to be able to attract that. At the same time, then you have a twin-track approach with Enterprise Ireland saying, okay, we have the action plan for jobs. That's the policy framework. Distill that down. You fund Enterprise Ireland, we'll say capacity. You fund local enterprise offices so that you can support the businesses. So if I take EPS in Mallow, a traditional engineering company, over 50 years in existence, intergenerational, that has now moved into a place where it is selling services in the water and infrastructure sector into places like Africa, building out new alliances, for instance, in Saudi Arabia. And that's through a government, an interventionist policy that says we need to support the Enterprise Ireland to be able to do that.
And that's a good point, but Arthur, you want to come in quickly?
Yeah,
and
sure.
heads up first. I'm picking on you to wrap this.
Okay,
So you know.
I think the idea is doing a fantastic job of promoting the country internationally. I think the last time that the Labour Party had a minister...
Sorry, could I just stop you for 2 seconds?
Yeah.
Because the Taoiseach Joan Burton has joined us in the hall, I think, now?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
So for those of you who don't know, we're school sisters. Joan and I went to the same school, Stanhope Street, in Stony Batter, although she did a little bit better than me, I think. Sorry, Arthur, go ahead.
Nice. No, we're just saying that the idea of doing a great job internationally of trying to attract people to the country, we want to get them into their regions. The last time the Labour Party had a minister in Kerry, we had an IDA office in Kerry, Sean, not just Cork, if you don't mind. And so that's when we need to get to the point where we knocked up those ones. Yeah, but we want to get it into the regions, and the stat at the moment is that it's going towards areas outside of Dublin. You look at the skills, you develop the skills, as Marx is saying, locally, but like when you get an announcement in an area like Tralee, it gives confidence. €6 million being spent by the IDA developing an advanced manufacturing facility, put pharmaceutical or medical devices inside it. That's wonderful news.
Let him
That's
get
what
in
we need
really
to do.
quickly, because
I
then
think
we're
it
nearly
does.
finished.
We'll beat it tonight, don't worry.
Just to say, to remind the audience that the most satisfactory moment on a door in my constituency was last night, when a lady cried and thanked me for the fact that her kid was now an apprentice carpenter. The apprenticeships are phenomenally important to people in our country. And the construction projects that are now in vogue in my constituency is phenomenal. And there's employment there. I see only 10 people applied for plastering. I hope now that the word goes out, there's plenty of vacancies for apprentices, given the beautiful growth in the economy in this country.
We need a
Located in Clare South.
No, we're out of time. I'm sorry. I'm going to get Jed to wrap.
Nora, just while Jed is moving over to the podium there, we also, while we keep talking about foreign direct investment, we mustn't forget about the homegrown, very large industries that we have here ourselves. I'm talking specifically about one that we have in Kilkenny, which is Glanbia, which is actually a huge international industry now out of agri-food.
And we need more Glanbia.
And we need more, we're going
Definitely.
Kerry's
Yeah.
Root Group